Hi everyone, and welcome to Jane Talks Murder, where I'll be talking about and reviewing an episode of Poirot, Murder, She Wrote, Diagnosis Murder, or Jonathan Creek. Today, I'm looking at Jonathan Creek, the Black Canary, or as I like to call it, that time we had a lot of filler. We begin the episode at an old house where we stare at this flimsy looking gate for a while before we get random shots of stuff, and this lady walks towards the camera like she's about to break the fourth wall. What the hell is that? Anyone who is into candles and purple smoke is in for a treat, as this lady gives a goblet to this dude as this other lady watches, and then this guy gets involved. There's a lot of random bullshit going on. Charlotte complains to Morella about said bullshit, but returns in time to see this guy apparently remove a tumor or something from Jerry's body without leaving a scratch. Charlotte passes Jonathan in the snow before he goes to the theatre where Adam is being a grade A sleazebag. Ooh, pretty! Morella writes a note which she addresses to her family before looking at a photo of them and one of her and her twin. Adam and Jonathan rehearse their latest trick, but Adam doubles over, so Jonathan takes him to the dressing room, where Maddie calls asking him to her bedroom so he can rescue her from a cockroach, and he teases her with it.
Why don't you just have sex with it, you thoroughly revolting person?
Jonathan's phone rings, so Maddie answers it, and it's Charlotte, who is distraught because Morella has unalived herself, apparently in an impossible way. Jeez, that thing! The pair jump into the car to head to the house, but it's a bit of a trip, so we have time for an exposition dump. Morella, aka the Black Canary, was an illusionist who relied on her twin sister Beryl to pull off her tricks. However, one day, during rehearsal, an electric buzzsaw mechanism jammed and sawed Beryl in half, which is a story that Maddie isn't a fan of. They get to the house and Charlotte tells them the same story, although why not just shut off the power? Anyway, she says Beryl's only family outside of them was a strange daughter, Hannah, she of the candles and purple smoke. A few weeks ago, Hannah sent a letter saying she was coming to visit, which freaked Morella out, and when she did turn up, she brought Pan Duck Lao with her, and when she left, it was super duper awkward. Jerry rolls in to say hi, although he can only lip read, and he was the one who witnessed Morella's death. Jerry took a nap in the conservatory, and when he woke up, he saw Morella arguing with a man in the garden before pulling a gun on him, so he limped away right before Morella shot herself to death. And dragging himself into the garden, Jerry realised that the mystery man had left no footprints. To make things even weirder, the paramedic tells him that Morella had been dead for at least 5 hours when she pulled the trigger. But Jonathan says it's not magic, neither was Jerry's surgery, it was all a trick. Charlotte mentions the note Morella left, so they take the lift where Jonathan notices a red mark which he sniffs, and Charlotte says the two twins got along. Suddenly Rick Mail is here, investigating the case, and points out the table lamp in the conservatory now no longer reaches the socket, before deciding Lionel is guilty and has him dragged away. Okay then! He interrogates him, but Lionel says he didn't do it, while Maddie and Jonathan nose around the woods near the house, and Jonathan explains that the red nail polish mark in the lift makes no sense as Morella had claustrophobia, and Maddie realises that this means it was Morella who died at the end of the buzzsaw, and Beryl has been living her life ever since. They get back to the car to discover it's been broken into, but the only thing stolen is some newspapers, while Gideon investigates a report of a limping man scaring some kids in the woods, and finds a tooth he likes too. Back at the house, Jonathan gets inspiration from old newspaper clippings and asks Jerry which leg the man limped on, while Gideon talks to himself and works something out about the lamp, and Maddie gets home to find her bed full of cockroaches. She goes to Jonathan's where they discuss the case before Jonathan realises where Hannah will be and gate crashes Adam's procedure, where Maddie breaks the news to Hannah about Morella's death, and Hannah admits she knew it was actually her mother Beryl when she saw her. We get another flashback of the buzzsaw incident where Beryl decided to take on her sister's identity for the sake of her family.
I had maybe half a minute to make a decision that would last a lifetime.
And Hannah was pissed that Beryl chose Charlotte over her and left. Jonathan and Maddie investigate a building in the middle of the night for no discernible reason. Oh great! Welcome to Silent Hill! And they scare up the mystery man, who limps on the opposite side to the one Jerry specified. Gideon gets a result back on the tooth and it belongs to Jonathan, which he explains away with a toffee, a matchbox and the break-in, while Jerry witnesses Hannah and Charlotte having a blazing row over the truth, and then they all show back up in the house. Charlotte tries to unalive herself, so Jerry shoots the rope and they all gather together, where Gideon says Beryl's secret identity was the motive for the murder. Maddie reveals the limping man was just homeless and had nothing to do with the murder, and Gideon says the table had been moved, hence why the lamp didn't reach. Jonathan takes over to explain the whole thing, and the man did leave footprints just over there, and just like the trick in the newspaper article, mirrors were used. But to trick Jerry, the table needed to be moved so he was in exactly the right position. Lionel overheard the truth about Morella, although he admits he worked it out already, and he thought Beryl murdered Morella, so he set the mirror into the window, adjusted the table, shot Beryl, put the body into position, backtracked over his own footprints, and waited for Jerry to wake up to pull off the perfect murder. However, the mystery man showed up asking for food, so Lionel scared him with the gun before fake shooting himself. Then, unexpectedly, Jerry came outside, so Lionel had to run in, get changed, and remove the mirror before going to comfort Jerry. But, on top of everything, Beryl had already overdosed that morning, which Lionel mistook for a nap. No, seriously, this thing is creepy. Okay, this is the highest rated episode of Jonathan Creek, and I am baffled as to why. Let's take the main story in isolation and let's lay it out. A woman has an accident rehearsing for a magic trick, and her twin sister took on her identity for the next 15 years until her estranged daughter came for a visit and discovered the truth, which Lionel overheard even though he'd already figured it out. Overnight, he set up a plan where he shot Beryl, even though she'd already overdosed, waited for Jerry to fall asleep, dressed up as Beryl, dumped her body, pretended to shoot himself, and then dismantled the trick, all before Jerry turned around, only for the crime to be solved because of a character who wasn't even connected to anything. On top of all that nonsense, there was a ridiculous amount of filler bullshit that had absolutely no bearing on the plot, so much so that there's probably a good 20 minutes of this episode that I didn't mention in the review. But let's list it all now just to prove a point. There was Jerry's music career, Jonathan and Maddie's bet over what gender Sergeant Richie was, Adam's obsession with Elsa, who turned out to be a Nazi, Adam's costume mix-up, Jonathan and Charlotte's romantic history, Maddie's jealousy over this, Maddie going to Jerry to get him to lip read a video she'd secretly took of Jonathan, and Jonathan getting randomly assaulted in the car park, which I tried to work into the script so we could get this wonderful line.
What's your game?
This. What's yours? Tiddlywinks? Now piss off before I nick the pair of you.
But it had no relevance to the rest of the story. Speaking of, there were a few things I did mention in the review that had no bearing on the plot either, and I thought about cutting them back out, but then this video would have been about 2 minutes long. There was no reason for Jerry to be deaf. It made no difference to the murder. Like, if him not being able to hear had played into the killer's plan, then that would have been clever, but him being in a wheelchair mattered more, and that wasn't even mentioned. There was no need for Maddie's cockroach problem. The tooth clue was quickly explained away, and if we're being honest about it, the mystic healing nonsense didn't need to be included either. It was such a convoluted way to get Hannah back into the house. This 90-minute episode was so full of fluff, dead ends, loose plot threads, and red herrings that it could have been more effectively and enjoyably told in half that time. And all the added stuff detracted from the good clues and clever moments that got lost in the shuffle, like Morella's claustrophobia, the moved lamp, the footprints, and the lie Lionel told about hearing Beryl call through the door, even though she was already dead, which I didn't even mention because there was no cohesive way to work it into the script. Now let's look at Rick Mayall, and he was a breath of fresh air, put a lot of energy into his performance, and was an interesting character, but once again, he wasn't needed. He didn't add anything plot-wise. He came to the same conclusions Jonathan did while prolonging the episode with plot threads that went nowhere. It's such a shame because I enjoyed the character, but he was on the whole redundant, which is an unfortunate waste of a great character and performance. A good idea that was lost in a sea of bullshit, which would have benefited from being less than an hour-long episode. We have two victims. Morella Carney, who died in a horrible way via buzzsaw, which was accidental, but her sister could have just shut off the power. And Beryl, who died of an overdose because she couldn't live with the guilt, but then our would-be killer Lionel shot her and did a magic trick with her body. So there you have it. That was The Black Canary. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or come say hi on social media. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit that like button, it really does mean a lot, or consider subscribing if you want to keep investigating with me. Alternatively, feel free to check out my other YouTube channels. Thank you so much for watching, I'll speak to you soon, and keep an eye out for clues.